Nobody clapped when the human shuttle landed. Every other species had received welcome ceremonies. The Torvaki cadets got drums and wore chants. The Silith received ritual clicking from thousands of mandibles. Even the Melori, who were basically intelligent clouds, got some kind of gas-based celebration that made the whole docking bay smell like flowers. But when the small human transport touched down on Station Meridian, there was only silence. A few aliens stopped to watch, most just kept walking. David Webb was the first human to step onto the station floor. He was 34 years old, average height, with short brown hair and calm gray eyes. Nothing about him looked special. Behind him came four others. Priya Nair, a woman with quick hands and quicker thoughts. Sam Okonkwo, built like a boxer but gentle as a teacher. Yuki Tanaka, who never seemed to blink. And finally Omar Hassan, the youngest at 22, still looking around with wonder at everything. They were the first humans ever admitted to the Galactic Defense Academy. A Torvaki guard looked down at them. He stood 8 feet tall with 4 massive arms and scales the color of dried blood. His translator clicked before he spoke. "You are the humans." "We are," David said. The guard made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Small, very small, follow the line to registration." They followed. The academy was 300 years old. It had trained warriors from 47 different species. Generals, admirals, legendary fighters all had walked these halls. The walls were covered with battle honors and names of the fallen. David read them as he walked. None were human. At registration, a bored-looking Oravan processed their documents. The Oravan were bird-like creatures with 3 eyes and feathers that shifted color with their moods. This one's feathers stayed a dull gray. Species human, homeworld Earth, classification Category 7, notes first cohort, provisional admission pending performance review. The Oravan looked up. "You understand what provisional means?" "We can be removed at any time," David said. "Correct, your species has no combat record in galactic conflicts, no natural weapons, no enhanced senses. Your world is listed as a Class 4 deathworld, but you evolved as persistence predators rather than apex fighters." The Oravan's feathers flickered with something like amusement. "Many here wonder why the Council admitted you at all." "We wondered that too," David said simply. "We're here to learn." The Oravan stamped their documents without another word. Their quarters were small, 5 beds in a room meant for 3. The humans didn't complain. They had all slept in worse conditions. David had spent 2 years in desert warfare. Priya had survived a mountain winter with nothing but a knife and determination. These rooms were luxury. "They really don't think much of us," Omar said, sitting on his bed. "Did you expect them to?" Sam asked. "I guess not, but still." David was already unpacking his single bag. "Let them think whatever they want. We're not here to change minds. We're here to learn everything they know." "And if they won't teach us?" Yuki asked. "Then we watch, we listen, we figure it out ourselves." David looked at his team. "Humans have been doing that since we lived in caves. Nothing has changed." The orientation assembly happened that evening. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of species filled a massive hall. The humans stood at the back, barely visible among the giants and the swarms. Commander Drethel took the stage. He was ancient for a Torvaki, his scales faded to pale orange, but he moved with the confidence of someone who had killed more enemies than most species had members. His voice boomed without any translator. "You are here because your worlds believe you are warriors. Most of you are wrong. This academy will break that belief. It will destroy your pride. It will show you how weak you truly are. And from that weakness, if you survive, you will become something greater." His 4 eyes scanned the crowd. They stopped on the human section. "I see we have new species this year, humans." He said the word like it was a disease. "I question the Council's decision to admit them. They have no claws, no armor, no venom. Their bodies are soft and slow. Their only notable feature is that they somehow survived a planet that should have killed them." Laughter rippled through the hall. A group of Silith cadets clicked their mandibles in what passed for mockery among their kind. Drethel raised a hand for silence. Perhaps they will surprise us. Perhaps they will prove the council right. But I have studied 47 species in my lifetime. I have never seen soft creatures become hard warriors. More laughter. David didn't react, neither did any of his team. They just watched, listened, took notes in. Their heads. After the assembly, a Torvaki cadet blocked their path to the quarters. He was young, barely 7 feet tall, with fresh scales still bright red. His name was Gormak, and he was clearly looking for entertainment. "Humans," he said, leaning down. "My clutch brother bet me you wouldn't last 1 cycle. I bet him you wouldn't last 2. Which of us wins?" David looked up at him calmly. "Guess you'll find out." Gormak laughed and stepped aside. "I like that. Stupid but brave. See you at combat training, little prey." That night, while other species celebrated or boasted in the common areas, the 5 humans sat in their small room with data tablets. "Combat assessment is in 3 days, Priya said. "They're using standard simulation protocols. We have access to the training manuals." "Then we read them all tonight," David said. "All of them? There's thousands of pages." David was already scrolling. "Then we better start now." Nobody argued. They had come too far to fail. They were the first. Everything they did would determine whether any human ever walked these halls again. Outside their window, the stars wheeled slowly past. Somewhere among them was a small blue planet where their ancestors had once been prey for everything with claws and teeth. They had survived then. They would survive now. The simulation chamber smelled like burnt metal and fear. David had noticed that every species gave off different stress chemicals. The Torvaki produced something sharp, like acid. The Sylith leaked a bitter oil from their joints. Even the Auravan shed tiny feathers that floated in the air like ash. Humans just sweated. Compared to the others, it was almost invisible. "First combat assessment begins now," announced the automated system. "Standard elimination protocol. Last team standing wins. Individual kills are tracked for ranking purposes." The holographic environment materialized around them. A ruined city, broken buildings, smoke and shadows everywhere. Perfect hunting ground for species with better eyes, better ears, better everything. The 5 humans spawned together in what had once been a parking structure. Around them, they could already hear the sounds of battle. Energy weapons fired, creatures roared, someone screamed. "Formation?" Omar asked, gripping his training rifle. "Triangle, Priya and Yuki on flanks. Sam, your rear guard. Omar, stay close to me." David checked his weapon, standard. "Issue nothing special. We move slow, we don't engage unless forced." "And if we're forced?" Sam asked. "Then we make it count." They moved through the ruined streets like ghosts. Other species thundered past them, hunting for glory. A pack of Sylith swarmed over a building, clicking battle songs. 2 Torvaki charged down an avenue, roaring challenges at anything that moved. The humans slipped through gaps. They hid behind rubble. They watched. "Contact left," Yuki whispered. 3 Auravan, rooftop." David saw them. The bird-like aliens were scanning the streets below with their 3 eyes, probably using their limited telepathy to sense prey. "Can they see us?" "Not yet, but if we move." "Then we don't move, wait." They waited 5 minutes, 10. The Auravan grew bored and flew to another position. The humans crept forward. It happened near the city center. A Sylith patrol spotted them. "Humans," the lead Sylith shouted, mandibles spreading in excitement. "Easy kills." 6 of them charged. Their armored bodies crashed through debris like it was paper. "Hold," David said. "David," Omar started. "Hold." The Sylith were 20 meters away. 15, 10. "Now crossfire." The humans split instantly. Priya and Yuki went left. Sam and Omar went right. David stood in the center and fired 3 shots, not at the Sylith, but at the ground in front of them. The Sylith hesitated for just 1 second. That was enough. Fire came from both flanks. The crossfire caught the Scythe in a pattern they had never trained for. Their armor was designed for frontal assault. Side attacks found gaps. In 4 seconds, all 6 were down. "Move," David ordered. They ran before any other teams could investigate the noise. But it didn't matter. 20 minutes later, a Torvaki squad found them. 8 warriors, too many to fight. David made a choice. "Priya, take the others, fall back. I'll hold them." "David, no." "That's an order." He stepped out from cover, rifle raised. The Torvaki laughed. "1 human against us?" The squad leader cracked all 4 of his knuckles. "This will be fun." David emptied his weapon at them. It barely slowed them down. Then they were on him. The simulation registered his death, but it also registered the 90 seconds it bought his team. They made it another 10 minutes before being cornered by a Scythe swarm. Priya died protecting Yuki. Sam died protecting Omar. Omar died alone, surrounded still. Fighting. When the simulation ended, the humans had 0 kills and last place in survival time. The results board lit up for everyone to see. At the top, a Scythe named Riek stood proudly with 17 individual kills. The Torvaki teams dominated the survival rankings. At the very bottom, marked in what might have been digital embarrassment, were the humans. "Well," Riek announced to the gathered cadets, "at least we know who cleans the equipment tonight." More laughter. The humans said nothing. They returned to their quarters in silence. But in the Academy's analysis center, Instructor Venchi was not laughing. The Oravan had been assigned to monitor the human team specifically. What she had seen troubled her. She replayed the simulation footage again. David Webb dying, but not fleeing, not hiding, dying so others could survive. Priya Nair making herself a target, drawing fire, creating time. Every single human death was a sacrifice. They fought as if each member's survival mattered less than the group's survival. They moved in patterns that should have been chaos, but somehow worked. They communicated without words, through gestures and glances that the Academy's systems couldn't translate. Venchi ran the numbers. Individually, each human was the weakest combatant in the simulation. But as a unit, their coordination exceeded anything in Academy records. Their willingness to die for each other created tactical options that no other species seemed to use. She brought her concerns to Commander Drethel that evening. "Coordination without strength is worthless," the old warrior said. "A chain of weak links is still weak." "But Commander, the patterns are irrelevant. Did they win? Did they survive? Did they prove themselves warriors?" Venchi lowered her head. "No, Commander." "Then your concerns are noted and dismissed. Focus on the cadets who matter." Venchi left without arguing. But that night, she made a copy of the human footage. Something in her 3-eyed brain would not let it go. Back in their quarters, the humans were not sleeping. They had pulled up every piece of simulation data they could access. Battle recordings, species tactics, historical assessments. "We died in 19 minutes, Omar said quietly. "We learned in 19 minutes, David corrected. "Now we learn more." "Learn what? How to die slower?" David looked at his young teammate. "No, how they think, how they fight, what they expect." He pulled up a recording of the Scythe swarm tactics. "Look at this. They attack the same way every time, same formations, same patterns. It's instinct for them." So instinct is predictable. Everything predictable can be beaten." They studied until sunrise. 5 humans in a small room, surrounded by giants and monsters, preparing for a war they weren't supposed to survive. Outside their door, Gormak paused on his way to breakfast. He had come to mock them for their defeat. But through the thin walls, he heard something that made him hesitate. They weren't crying, they weren't complaining. They were planning. For the first time since their arrival, the young Torvaki felt something strange when he thought about the humans. It wasn't respect, not yet. But it wasn't amusement either. Theory classes were held in an amphitheater that could seat 2,000 beings. Professor Tannies floated at the center, their Melori body shifting between shades of purple and blue as they spoke. The Melori were gas beings, ancient and wise, and Tannies had taught combat philosophy longer than most species had achieved space travel. Today we discuss doctrine, Tannies said, their voice coming from everywhere at once. Every species fights according to its nature. Understanding this nature is the foundation of all strategy. The amphitheater was full. Torveki sat in reinforced sections. Silith clustered together in clicking groups. Oravon perched on elevated platforms, and in the far corner, almost invisible among the giants, sat 5 humans. Let us begin with examples, Tannies continued. Cadet Gormak explained Torveki combat doctrine. The young reptilian stood proudly. We dominate. Superior strength, superior aggression, superior will. We break the enemy's spirit through overwhelming force. A Torveki warrior does not retreat. A Torveki warrior does not hesitate. We charge and our enemies fall. Approving rumbles came from the other Torveki. Very good, Cadet Riek, explained Silith doctrine. The insectoid rose on 6 legs. We swarm. Individual lives are acceptable losses if the hive succeeds. We attack from all directions. We accept casualties to create openings. Victory is mathematical. We simply need more soldiers than the enemy has weapons. The Silith section clicked in agreement. Tannies' colors shifted to a thoughtful green. Both effective doctrines, both successful for thousands of years. Professor turned slowly. Cadet Webb explained human combat doctrine. Silence fell. Every eye, antenna, and sensor in the room focused on the small figure in the corner. David stood. He looked even smaller standing among the empty seats, surrounded by species that could tear him apart without effort. We don't have one, he said. Confused murmurs spread through the hall. Explain, Tanny said. Humans have no single doctrine. We fought ourselves for our entire history, every terrain, every condition, every type of weapon. We've been outnumbered and won. We've been outgunned and won. We've been invaded and won. David's voice was calm but carried clearly. We learn to become whatever the enemy doesn't expect. Riek made a clicking sound of disbelief. That's not a doctrine. That's admitting you have no strategy. No, David said. That is our strategy, adaptation. The enemy expects us to charge, we hide. The enemy expects us to hide, we charge. The enemy studies our tactics, we change them. We have been doing this for 10,000 years. Gormak laughed. Against each other, fighting yourselves is not the same as fighting real warriors. Isn't it? David looked directly at the Torveki. You've never had to face an enemy who thinks exactly like you, who knows every move before you make it, who has the same strength, the same weapons, the same desperation. He paused. Humans have. We are the result of fighting the most dangerous enemy in our history, ourselves. The amphitheater went quiet. Professor Tannies' colors had shifted to something nobody recognized. An interesting perspective, Cadet Webb. Please sit. David sat, the class continued, but something had changed. That night, Tannies accessed human historical records. The professor was over 400 years old. They had studied warfare from 100 worlds. They thought they understood violence. They were wrong. Human records showed war without end. Not the occasional conflicts that most species experienced, but constant, evolving, relentless warfare. They invented new weapons and then invented defenses against those weapons. They created doctrines and then created counter-doctrines. They wrote books about war, studied war as a science, turned war into an art form. Most disturbing were the concepts that had no translation in the galactic standard language. Guerrilla warfare, striking from shadows, disappearing before the enemy could respond. Making strength into weakness. Psychological operations, breaking the enemy's mind before breaking their body. Total war, mobilizing entire civilizations, making every farmer, every factory worker, every child into part of the war machine. And something called hearts and minds, defeating enemies by making them not want to fight anymore. Tannis paused on that last concept for a long time. Every species in the galaxy fought to kill. That was what war meant. You destroyed the enemy until they could not fight. But humans had figured out something else. You could destroy the enemy's will to fight. You could make them surrender without killing them. You could turn enemies into allies. It was horrifying, it was brilliant. Tannis called instructor Venchi. "I've been studying the humans too," Venchi admitted. "Their simulation performance was strange. They died protecting each other." "Because they fight as a single organism," Tannis said. "Each human is willing to sacrifice for the group because the group survives even when individuals die. It's how they survived their world." "But they still lost, badly." "Did they?" Tannis's colors shifted. "Or did our tests fail to measure what they're actually good at? Our simulations reward individual kills and survival time. Human warfare doesn't work that way. They don't count bodies, they count outcomes." Venchi was quiet for a moment. "What do we do?" "Watch them carefully. I have a feeling they haven't shown us anything yet." In the human quarters, the team was practicing hand signals. They had developed over 30 different gestures in the past week. Simple movements that could communicate complex instructions. The Academy's translators couldn't read them. Other species couldn't interpret them. It was a private language built from scratch. "Theory class was interesting," Sam said while signing for Omar to move left. "David nearly got us killed," Priya replied, signing for Yuki to hold position. "Half the Torvaki wanted to test his adaptation theory personally." "Good," David said. "Let them think about it, let them wonder." He signed for the team to regroup. "That's how it starts. First they laugh at you, then they think about you, then they fear you." "And then?" Omar asked. David smiled. "Then they ask you to teach them." Nobody believed that yet, but they practiced their signals anyway. They studied the other species' patterns. They learned the Academy's layout. Its schedules, its blind spots. The midterm exercise was coming. Live combat on a jungle moon. Real terrain, real weapons, real consequences. Other species were preparing by training harder in their traditional methods. The Torvaki lifted heavier weights. The Syleth practiced swarm formations. The humans did something else entirely. They planned, and deep in the Academy's archives, Tannis found one more human concept that had no translation. The word was underdog. It meant someone expected to lose, someone written off, someone nobody feared. The records showed that humans had a complicated relationship with that word. They seemed to enjoy proving it wrong. The jungle moon had no name. The Academy just called it the Green Hell. 12 teams landed at different points across 100 kilometers of dense vegetation. The rules were simple: capture other teams' flags, last team with a flag wins. Stun weapons only, but the jungle itself was not so kind. Poisonous plants, aggressive wildlife, terrain that could swallow you whole. Team Aurek was favored to win. 8 Torvaki warriors led by Gormak himself, who had spent the weeks before the exercise boasting about the glory he would claim. Betting pools across the station gave them 15-to-1 odds. The human team was not even listed in the betting pools. Nobody would waste money on a certain loss. The dropships released their passengers and vanished. The exercise had begun. Most teams immediately moved toward each other. The Syleth swarmed through the trees looking for prey. The Torvaki crashed through the undergrowth, roaring challenges. The Oravan took to the air, hunting from above. The humans did nothing. For the first hour, they sat at their landing zone. They studied the jungle, they listened, they watched. "Team Aurek is moving northeast," Yuki reported. She had climbed a tree and was tracking movement through the canopy. "Fast, loud, they want everyone to know where they are." "Confidence," David said. "They expect to win every fight." "The Syleth are spreading out," Priya added. "Classic hunting pattern, they'll try to surround isolated targets." "And the Oravan?" "High altitude. They're using telepathy to coordinate, probably sharing vision across all their members." David nodded. Good, now we move. But they didn't move toward any team. They moved toward the supply caches. Academy rules allowed teams to use provided equipment from hidden locations across the jungle. Most teams ignored them, trusting in their natural abilities. The humans collected everything they could find. By the third hour, they had acquired emergency rations, medical supplies, communication equipment, and most importantly, the location data for every cache on the moon. Then they started destroying what they didn't take. "This is wrong," Omar said as they disabled their fourth supply point. "We're supposed to be capturing flags." "We're supposed to win," David corrected. "The rules say nothing about how." They moved through the night. Other teams clashed in the darkness, energy weapons lighting up the jungle like lightning. Screams echoed through the trees. Flags changed hands. The humans avoided all of it. Instead, they found the communication relays, small automated stations that let teams coordinate across the jungle. Technically Academy property, technically off-limits for destruction. But the rules didn't say you couldn't reprogram them. By dawn, 3 teams had surrendered, not from combat, from exhaustion. Their supplies had vanished. Their communications had become unreliable. The jungle had turned against them in ways they couldn't understand. Team Auric was still standing, still strong, still hunting. Gormak found the human trail near the river. Finally, he growled to his team, "The prey shows itself." They followed the tracks for 2 hours. The trail was obvious, too obvious, some of the older Torveki thought. But Gormak was young and hungry for glory. The trail led to a clearing, and in the clearing stood David Webb alone. "Humans," Gormak roared, stepping out of the jungle. "Your time hiding is over." 7 other Torveki emerged behind him. 8 warriors, each capable of tearing a human apart with their bare hands. David didn't run. He just stood there, arms at his sides. "You have courage," Gormak admitted. "Stupid courage, but courage. Where are your teammates? Did they abandon you?" "No," David said. "They're watching." Gormak laughed. "Watching won't save you. Nothing will save you. Surrender your flag and we might let you walk away conscious." "I have a counteroffer," David said. "Surrender your flag and we'll let you keep your dignity." The Torveki stared at him. Then they burst into laughter. "Human," Gormak said, stepping closer, "you are one small creature against 8 Torveki warriors. What possible reason would we have to surrender?" David smiled. "Because you don't have a flag anymore." Silence. Gormak's hand went to the pouch at his belt, the pouch that had contained Team Auric's flag since the exercise began. It was empty. "6 hours ago," David said, "while you were hunting the Scythe at the western ridge, we took it. You've been guarding nothing this entire time." The Torveki turned to each other, confused, angry. Their scales flushed dark red with rage. "Impossible," Gormak snarled. "We would have seen you, we would have smelled you." "You smelled what we wanted you to smell. One of our team rubbed themselves with Torveki musk from the supply caches. Your own scent covered their approach." David's voice was calm. "You've been tracking us for 2 hours because we let you. Every moment you spent following our trail was a moment you weren't protecting your base." Gormak raised his weapon. "Then we'll take your flag by force." "You could try, but you'll have to find my team first. They're not in this clearing, they're not even close. And while you're searching, the other teams are still fighting." David paused. "How long before someone realizes Team Auric has no flag? How long before you become the hunted?" The Torveki looked at each other. The math was simple and terrible. Without a flag, they had already lost. Fighting the humans would accomplish nothing except revenge. "This isn't combat," Gormak said, his voice low. "This is trickery." "This is war," David replied. "Real war, the kind where you win before the fighting starts." He met the young Torveki's eyes. "My ancestors learned this the hard way. They didn't have claws or scales or 4 arms. They had to be smarter. They had to be faster, not faster in body, faster in mind." The jungle was quiet. Finally, Gormak lowered his weapon. "You won nothing, you just avoided losing." For a species that everyone expected to lose immediately, David turned and walked toward the jungle. Avoiding losing is the first step to winning. He disappeared into the green. Team Oryx stood in the clearing for a long time, 8 mighty warriors who had been defeated without a single shot fired. When the final results came in, the humans hadn't captured the most flags. They hadn't achieved the highest kills, but they had survived. Their flag was intact. Of the 12 teams that started, only 3 finished the exercise with their colors. Humans were one of them. The academy went silent when the results were announced. And in the betting pools, someone quietly added humans to the list for the next exercise. The odds were no longer infinite. Commander Drethel threw the data tablet across his office. "Disqualify them," he said. "They cheated." Instructor Venchi remained calm. "Commander, we reviewed every rule. The humans violated nothing. Supply caches were available to all teams. Communication relays were not designated as protected equipment. Flag security was each team's responsibility. They didn't fight. They skulked around like prey animals. They won, by any measure that matters. They survived, and their flag remained intact." Drethel slammed his 4 fists on his desk. The ancient wood cracked. "This is the Galactic Defense Academy, not a school for thieves and tricksters. Combat means combat, strength against strength, will against will, not this. This." "Strategy?" Professor Tannis offered. The Mallory had been floating quietly in the corner, their colors a thoughtful silver. What the humans demonstrated was strategy at its purest form. They identified their weaknesses, identified their enemies' assumptions, and built a plan that made those weaknesses irrelevant. "The other cadets are talking," Venchi added. "Some are angry, but many are curious. The Silith cadet Riek asked me for a copy of the humans' exercise footage." "Why?" "He said he wanted to study it. His exact words were, 'I need to understand how prey thinks so I can stop thinking like a predator.'" Drethel went still, coming from a Silith that was almost heresy. Their entire species' philosophy was built on predator mentality: swarm, overwhelm, consume. "What have these humans done to my academy?" he asked quietly. "They challenged it," Tannis said. "And challenges are supposed to make us stronger. Isn't that what you tell every new class?" The commander had no answer. Across the station, the humans had become something they never expected: interesting. Cadets who had ignored them now watched them in the corridors. Conversations stopped when they entered rooms, not from mockery, from curiosity. The laughingstock had done something nobody understood, and understanding it had become important. Riek found David in the training hall. "Human," the Silith said, his mandibles clicking with uncertainty. "I want to know how you think." David set down his weight. The human exercise equipment was laughably small compared. "To what other species used? What do you mean?" "The jungle, you didn't fight, but you won. My brain cannot process this. Silith fight, that is what we do. The hive attacks and enemies fall, but you—" Riek's compound eyes seemed to struggle. "You made fighting pointless. How?" "By changing what the fight was about," David said. "You thought the fight was about capturing flags through combat. We thought the fight was about keeping our flag while making sure others couldn't keep theirs." "But that's the same thing." "Is it?" David picked up his weight again. "Your way requires strength. Ours required information. You have more strength. We gathered more information." Riek was quiet for a long moment. "Can this be taught?" "Why would you want to learn? Your way works for your species." "Does it?" Riek's mandibles pulled tight against his face. "I've seen the kill records for major conflicts. Silith casualties are always highest. We accept losses because we have numbers, but what if we didn't have to lose so many?" David looked at the insectoid with new respect. "That's a dangerous question for a Silith to ask." "I know my hive would call it weakness." Riek stood straighter. "But dead soldiers cannot serve the hive. If thinking like prey keeps more of us alive, then perhaps prey have something to teach predators." It was the beginning of something new. Over the following weeks, a strange group began meeting in the abandoned storage bay on level 12. Riek brought 3 other Syleth who had questions. Gormak appeared one night, saying nothing, just watching. 2 young Oravan joined because their telepathy had picked up echoes of something interesting. The humans taught what they could. Sam showed the Torvaki how to turn their size into a disadvantage for enemies, how to use narrow spaces, how to make strength work against itself. Priya worked with the Syleth on individual decision-making. Their hive structure made them powerful in groups but vulnerable when separated. She taught them to think alone without losing connection to each other. Yuki and the Oravan developed hybrid communication methods. Their telepathy combined with human tactical signals created something neither species had achieved on their own. And David talked with anyone who would listen about the most dangerous concept of all, uncertainty. Every doctrine you've learned assumes your enemy will behave in predictable ways, he explained. One night, Torvaki charge, Syleth swarm, Oravan disable from range. You know what to expect from each other because you've fought each other for centuries. And humans, Gormak asked. Humans have only been fighting humans. We've had to constantly innovate because our enemy innovates too. The moment a tactic works, it stops working because both sides know about it. David looked around the room. Imagine facing an enemy that might charge or hide or surrender or fake surrender or attack from underground or set traps or poison your water supply or convince your allies to switch sides. How do you build a doctrine against that? Nobody had an answer. You can't, David said. That's the point. The only defense against unpredictability is to become unpredictable yourself, to stop assuming the enemy will follow rules, to question everything, including your own instincts. Gormak's scales had faded to a troubled gray. You describe madness. How can warriors function without doctrine? They function better, because doctrine is just a set of assumptions about how battle will unfold. Break those assumptions and you break the enemy's mind before you break their body. The room was silent. Instructor Venchi had been watching from the doorway. She had discovered these meetings a week ago but said nothing. Now she stepped forward. You realize, she said to David, that you are teaching potential enemies how to defeat themselves. I'm teaching potential allies how to survive, David replied. There are threats in this galaxy that don't care about Torvaki strength or Syleth numbers or Oravan minds. Against those threats, doctrine will fail. Adaptation is the only thing that works. And if we never become allies, if we remain enemies. David met her 3-eyed gaze. Then at least the war will be interesting. Venchi's feathers shifted to an amused gold. The final exam is in 3 weeks. The scenario is designed to be unwinnable. Every previous class has failed. Maybe, David said, previous classes didn't know how to ask the right questions. The Oravan instructor turned and left, but at the door she paused. Commander Drethel wanted to expel you after the jungle exercise. Professor Tannies and I convinced him to wait. She looked back. Don't make us regret it. When she was gone, Gormak spoke up. Human David, when we first met I called you prey. The Torvaki's voice was heavy with something. That might have been shame. I was wrong. You are not prey. You are not predators either. He paused, searching for words. You are something else, something we don't have a word for. David smiled. On Earth, we call ourselves survivors. Everything else, predator, prey, warrior, thinker, those are just tools we use depending on what we need to survive. And what do you need to survive the final exam? David looked at the mixed group of species gathered in the storage bay. Syleth, Torvaki, Oravan, human, warriors who had been enemies learning to become something more. Not just us, he said, all of you working together, thinking together. Why would we help humans pass your exam? David's smile widened, because it's not just our exam anymore. Final examination day arrived with no ceremony. The scenario was simple: defend a civilian outpost against overwhelming attackers. Academy instructors would play the enemy force, unlimited numbers, unlimited weapons. The assault would continue until the outpost fell. Every class in Academy history had failed. The record was 11 hours, most lasted less than 5. "This exam is not designed to be won," Commander Drethel announced to the assembled cadets. "It is designed to teach you the truth of combat. No matter how strong you are, no matter how skilled, there is always a force that can defeat you. Your goal is to last as long as possible and learn from your failure." The cadets took their positions. For the first time in 300 years, they did not separate by species. David had spent the weeks before the exam asking one question to every cadet who would answer. "What are you afraid of?" It was not an insult. It was not mockery. He genuinely wanted to know. The Torvaki feared confinement. Their size meant tight spaces triggered deep panic. The Syleth feared isolation. Cut off from the hive sense, they lost the ability to coordinate. The Oravan feared psychic noise. Too many panicked minds nearby overwhelmed their telepathy. Each fear was a weakness. David turned each weakness into a weapon. The tunnels came first. Gormak and the Torvaki dug them in the days before the exam, creating a network beneath the outpost. The instructors would expect the defenders to hold walls and towers. They would not expect attacks from below. The communication web came second. Priya worked with the Oravan to establish relay points throughout the defense. When one fell, others would take over. The Syleth were never alone, even when they seemed to be. The psychic screens came third. The Oravan practiced broadcasting calm instead of fear. When the assault came, they would fill the air with steady thoughts, protecting each other's minds. And at the center of it all was the one thing no other class had tried: adaptation. "The defense changes every hour," David explained in the final briefing. "No fixed positions, no static doctrine. We watch how they attack and we respond. We become whatever they don't expect." Riek clicked his mandibles nervously. "This seems like chaos." "Controlled chaos," David said. "The enemy expects patterns, we give them none. Every time they think they understand us, we change." The assault began at dawn. Instructor-controlled drones came first, waves of mechanical attackers to test the perimeter. Standard tactics, easy to defeat with standard responses. The cadets did not respond with standards. The Torvaki emerged from tunnels behind the drone lines, crushing control relays. The Syleth swarmed in patterns that shifted every 30 seconds, impossible to target. The Oravan provided overwatch while broadcasting confusion into the drone network. The first wave fell in 40 minutes. Commander Drethel, watching from the control center, leaned forward. "Increase the assault, level 2 protocols. Heavier drones, faster attackers, coordinated strikes from multiple directions." The defenders adapted. Gormak's tunnel network became a transportation system, moving fighters where they were needed before the enemy could respond. The Syleth split and reformed, never presenting the same formation twice. Human hand signals passed between species like a secret language. Level 2 fell in 2 hours. Level 3, Drethel ordered. Live instructors, maximum force. Now the real test began. Experienced warriors from every species joined the assault. They knew cadet tactics. They had broken dozens of classes before. They had never faced this. The outpost became a living maze. Defenders appeared from impossible angles. Traps activated in sequences that seemed random but weren't. Communication disruption was immediate. The moment one instructor squad got comfortable, everything changed. 6 hours passed, then 8, then 10. The record fell. Drethel stared at the tactical display, his 4 hands clenched. How are they doing this? Tannies floated beside him, colors shifting through wonder and satisfaction. They're not fighting as species anymore. They're fighting as a single organism. Human coordination combined with Torvaki strength, combined with Syleth numbers, combined with Oravan intelligence. That's impossible. Species don't work together like that. They didn't until now. The assault continued. 12 hours, 15. The instructors threw everything they had at the outpost. Nothing worked for long. Finally, after 19 hours of continuous combat, Drethel raised his hand. End simulation. The attacker stopped. The defenders stood in exhausted confusion. "Commander," Venchi asked. Drethel stood slowly. His ancient scales had paled with something that might have been shock. "I have served this academy for 140 years, he said. "I have watched 47 species try to pass this examination. I designed it to be unwinnable because war is often unwinnable. Defeat teaches humility." He walked to the window that overlooked the outpost, now scarred and battered but still standing. "Today, for the first time, I have nothing left to teach." He turned to face the exhausted cadets on the display. "They have won, not by being stronger, not by being smarter, but by becoming something we never imagined, a unity beyond species." The graduation ceremony was held that evening. David stood at the front, still covered in dust and sweat from the exercise. Beside him stood Gormak, Riek, the Oravan, and all the others who had trained together in that abandoned storage bay. Drethel addressed them all. "I mocked humans when they arrived. I called them prey. I said soft creatures could not become hard warriors." His voice carried across the silent hall. "I was wrong. Humans are not prey, but they are not predators either. They are something far more dangerous. They are teachers." He looked at David. "What you brought to this academy was not strength or speed or natural weapons. You brought an idea that the greatest warrior is not the one who wins battles, but the one who makes their enemies unable to fight at all." David stepped forward. "We didn't come to prove humans are better. We came to prove that we could learn and that we could teach. The galaxy will face threats that no single species can handle alone. When that day comes, you'll need fighters who can adapt, who can work together despite their differences, who can become whatever the moment requires." He looked out at the hall filled with species who had once laughed at his kind. "We're offering to help you become those fighters, not because we want power, not because we want control, because we've learned through 10,000 years of blood and pain that survival is not a single species game." Drethel nodded slowly. "Then teach us what humans know about war." David smiled. "Not just war, teach you what we know about peace, how to fight so well that you never have to fight at all, how to turn enemies into allies, how to protect instead of destroy." The academy curriculum was restructured the next month. Human tactical doctrine became mandatory. Cross-species training became standard. The storage bay on level 12 became an official classroom. On the transport back to Earth for leave, Priya sat beside David, watching the stars slide past. "Do you think we changed anything?" she asked. David thought about Gormak, who had started as a bully and ended as a brother. About Riek, who had questioned his own species' philosophy. About all the walls that had crumbled in a single year. "We changed how they see us," he said. "That's the first step. And the next, making sure they never have reason to fear us." Priya was quiet for a moment. "And if they fear us anyway?" David looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, threats waited that would make this academy's challenges look like games. Somewhere out there, the real test was coming. "Then we adapt," he said, "just like always." The transport hummed through the void, carrying 5 small humans home. Behind them, an academy that had trained warriors for 3 centuries was learning to train something new. Survivors,